for joining us today. I am here with a fellow DIYer creator, Billi Maddox from the Maker Maddox YouTube channel. Thank you, Billi, for joining me today.
Oh, thanks for having me. Hello, everyone.
Was that radio announcer enough? I'm working on my radio announcer.
That's good. That was good.
Yeah?
That was really good.
All right. Sweet. So, for those of you who don't know, which probably are most, I don't know why anyone would know this, but Billi and I struck up a conversation. I don't remember if it was me commenting on one of his videos first. I think perhaps it was, but in any case, we struck up a conversation, and I'd had this idea for a little while about sitting down with fellow creators, people that just kind of really live in that world, particularly DIY artists, creators, stuff like that. So this is the first of what I hope to be an ongoing series of me sitting down with fellow creators, and Billi has graciously agreed to be my test subject. It's kind of, we're aiming for like a conversational / loose Q&A type of deal here. And with that, I do have, okay, so for those of you watching, I do have a sheet here, all right? I'm not in some polished Hollywood studio, and I don't want to be rehearsed and fake. So you may see me glance down at this periodically. Deal with it.
I have the same questions here with some notes.
How did you get those? No.
I got, oh, I was like, wait a minute, was I not supposed to be on that email?
Yeah. Wait, we should compare these. Did you write down the same thing?
The CIA was CC'd on it, so I don't know if it was supposed to come to me.
So the first question that I got for you, which you have on your end, of course, is what's your background with what you do on your channel? You know, how'd you get into it?
Well, I've forever been a maker. I think when you had mentioned to me that you went to the Art Institute. I went to Parsons School of Design in New York, and so I've always been a maker, a creative person, and this is kind of an extension of that, I suppose. But with what I mostly do on my channel, I think it's the love of Star Wars, really. That's where it begins. It's kind of, yeah.
Just for you. I mean, like, I've had this shirt, but I wore it today for you, man.
Well, you didn't buy it for this interview? I'm out of here.
My wife made this.
This is over. Oh, really? Oh, that's cool.
Yeah, she's got one of those. One of those Cricut design things that cuts out and you iron it on. She also made this.
Very cool.
Deal here.
Very cool. So, two makers in the family. That's always good.
There you go. But continue with what you're saying.
Yeah, I think
Parsons. Love of Star Wars.
Parsons. That's my sort of background, and then Star Wars of my sort of want to be in universe. You know, I think the typical, or maybe I shouldn't say typical, but I think most Star Wars fans have like an affinity for a character, or you know, or they love their Obi-Wan Kenobi, or they love their Darth Vader, or something like that. Yeah. I've had a different experience with Star Wars in that I've always just wanted to be in that universe. I don't want to be someone in that.
You want to be universe you. You want to be your own.
Exactly.
Got it.
So when I started doing things, I quickly kind of caught on to the fact that, to me, like screen accuracy and movie like replica is kind of boring to me. Now, it's not to say that it isn't cool or anything like that. You know, it is. I do have some things that are probably more accurate to screen, but I've always wanted to make things that are inspired by and could exist in that universe. To make me feel like, well, these are my items in that universe.
You're aiming less to replicate, more to create original, inspired by.
Yes. Exactly. Because all of them had to come from something, you know. Even Lucasfilm, they started with nothing and then started to fill this universe with objects and things,
Right.
you know?
Yeah, they when he got his, I think it was when he got his loan or whatever it was, when he got his big old budget for starting for the first Star Wars, he used it to create ILM, and
Yeah.
through that they went on the cheap and created all this stuff.
My experience with Star Wars is that I've always been more connected to the objects and the ships and the, you know, the sort of background, um, what fills that universe and what sort of fleshes it out into the real, rather than being really attached to like a character. Like I've never really, of course I like the characters, you know what I mean? But I've never been like, oh, I'm like a diehard fan for, you know, Obi-Wan or whatever.
How
Like,
dare you?
it's always been more about, it's always been more about like, what is that cup back there? You
Yeah,
know?
that's cool. Well,
For
it's
instance, like Rogue One, when Rogue One came out,
yeah.
what blew my mind was seeing a street market with like street food. I was like, that's what I want to see. Like,
well,
that's
the extra little details that help sell the. I don't know. Maybe you said, maybe it was more of a generalized statement. I don't actually remember already. But when you went to that school there in New York, I don't know what it was you were studying, but it sounds like to me that you very much have like the heart of like a props guy. Like you just have such an appreciation for the little details and the things that are in like the background and just really help to bring that whole world to life. Is that?
Well, it's interesting because I went to Parsons for photography, but which you have a photography background as well, don't you?
Yeah.
Yeah. And I went to Parsons for photography, but I spent my entire time there with the product design kids and in the product design department.
Yeah.
I found photography very competitive, right? And I was, without tooting my own horn, I was and perhaps am very good. So I kind of went in, I did my stuff, and then I spent my free time with the product design kids, which it felt a bit more communal. There was there's a history of like a connection to Bauhaus with Parsons, and seeing them all work together, help each other on projects, sending one person out to get like lunches and dinners for everybody, just felt very like communal.
Yeah.
And I think that's maybe where I got my hands dirty, and being able to do that without connecting it to a grade or something like that, I think was very fun to me.
More passion versus like almost more strictly passion than like passion and or academic or like work or like
right.
Yeah. No,
and that's where I picked up things just by watching, like, you know, vacuum forming and bent plywood and all types of things that I don't really use. I don't really work in that way, but it kind of informs what I do work on, you know? It's kind of cool.
Well, for anyone who's comes from any kind of like an art background, do we need to take a pause?
Yeah.
Okay. She knocked it down.
Thank you.
I so wish that you owned some sort of like a golem prop head or something that she could just pop up over the over the thing right there after she crawled up or whatever. Man, that would be so like.
Oh, yeah.
But for anyone who is at all familiar or has any kind of a design background, and for those of you who don't, something to think about if you're thinking about doing some DIY stuff, you know, doing your own little props here and there or whatever, is that, like you were just talking about, maybe you don't use the vacuum forming currently or haven't done it much or whatever, but the more that you know about the creative space and what's available out there and certain design elements, color theory when it comes to painting things, silhouette and the importance of like shape when seeing something from a distance and seeing it as being, there's like that sci-fi face-off show for those of you who've seen that, where every time they marched out one of their prosthetics, they always had them backlit and you would see just the black silhouette of the character before they actually put the light on them. So what all this means is that it's great to it's always better to design from a position of choice, not just random or kind of limited knowledge. So the more that you can open yourselves up and kind of look into what's out there, the more you can decide, well, that's not for me, or I don't want to add this into this piece, or something like that.
That's a really, really good point. Really good point. And it all informs the other, because the more, even when you're trying something new, given that you've worked on something else and worked out processes over here, it'll kind of let you uh, sort of tackle something new a bit better, because you're thinking, well, if I was doing it this way, I would go about it step one, step two, step three. So if this is slightly different, how would I approach that? And it all kind of works and informs each other, which I think is cool.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And I mean, like, the wealth of knowledge you can get from like failure.
Oh yeah.
I mean,
absolutely.
And there's so many people out there who are afraid to take the first step because of the failure, and like that's part of the journey, really. I mean, I totally get the frustration of like you put some time and effort into something and you're like, here's a polished turd, but you learn so much by doing that, so that the next time that you go about doing it, you can avoid some of those pitfalls and stuff like that. So really, when you said
wise, okay, sorry.
No, I think sometimes
Jimmy DiResta on YouTube. Oh, sorry.
You go ahead. You're the guest.
The very wise Jimmy DiResta on YouTube. I don't know if you know about Jimmy DiResta, but he is like the godfather of the maker community. And he's not even the biggest channel. It's just he radiates this kind of sentiment that you're going to mess up. He has this, I don't know if he made it up or if he heard it somewhere. I think he said he heard it somewhere. But he always says that you go to school on the first one.
Yeah.
And then you continue to get better and better as you make more, Right. When he says whenever he's tackling something new, he's always making his first iteration of it, knowing that it's going to be garbage. But he has in his mind planned that he's going to make a second, a third, and then eventually master it.
Right.
And, it could be discouraging to have a bunch of things fail, but you learn so much more from mistakes than you do from,
well, that's how
from something working.
That is the process of learning a lot of the times.
Yeah.
I mean, I think that there are so many things that people say that you could just add a not yet or a yet.
Yeah.
Oh, well, I'm not a good drawer yet.
Yeah.
I'm not a good carpenter. I'm not a good construction. I'm not a good whatever yet, because there's not like a gene that you're born with that everyone starts at a super young age and they kind of start some of these skills earlier on than other people do, but they have no more capability a lot of the times than anyone. Maybe you've always looked at paintings or certain creative things throughout your life and you just never really dabbled with it but you always admired it, but now you're like 30 years old, 40 years old, whatever, and you're like, oh, well, I'm not really artistic. Well, you just haven't gone there. You haven't tried it. You haven't dared to fail again and again and to refine and like actually build some skills. So I mean, like, you're totally capable. You are totally capable of doing it, person watching this.
I second that. And I think that's why I say at the start of every single one of my videos is I'm going to mess this up so that you don't have to.
Which I love.
Because I want to I want to give people that like push, that like, look, I am here publicly doing this. Mm-hmm. And if I mess up, it is okay. Which in turns communicates like it's okay for you to do that too.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's okay for anyone. You're gonna mess it up. It's fine. Yeah. It's fine. And most of making, I would say, is a different steps of messing something up until it's final. Yeah. Like even with a blaster that I repaint or something, like my latest one that I just did, which I love. Even that one, I had to completely sand this down to nothing,
Yeah.
I had to
Nice.
completely sand this down and junk it up in order to then take it to the next step, which is paint and stuff. Like it's just a continuous step of tearing something down to building it back up, you know?
Maybe we kind of inherently covered some of this, but I'm going to go ahead and move on to another question for you, which is what excites you about what you do? Like, why'd you start the YouTube channel, and what keeps you going?
I think this one, how do I explain this? Okay, so
Slowly.
I've always like yeah. I've always like I've always made stuff, right?
Yeah.
And even before the channel, I was sort of dabbling in making sort of props and things, you know,
Mm.
for cosplay and whatnot. But I always sort of got into a pattern of like working on something for a little bit and then putting it aside for a month or two and then coming back to it and working on it. So I didn't start the channel. I didn't start making in order to have content for the channel. I started the channel to give me an impetus and a weekly check-in
Yeah.
with myself
I can see that.
so that I would feel some sort of pressure from myself, which I guess I could have done it without the channel, but there's something about doing it publicly that it was like, no, okay, remember that thing from last weekend? Like, where are you with it now? Because there's a video that needs to go up this week, right? So
Absolutely.
it gave me that like push. So I think it's not. I didn't start the channel to make. I was making, and I used the channel as the as the driving force. You know.
Yeah. Well, yeah. I mean,
So
it's almost like having like a, I don't know, not homework, but it's like having a due date. It's like and when you
yeah,
feel not only for yourself, but especially when you start to get more subscribers and there's more people that you have brought into, and kind of built this community. And there's certain, I mean, for people who post content on specific days, weekly, bi-weekly, whatever, right? I think that we all know that the subscribers, the fans, the followers, they start to look forward to some of that stuff, And so, absolutely, I make the wands. I make the wands, but I make wands, and there have been some that I was like, I don't know if I'm ready for it. Like, I don't know if it's quite done yet. I'm not sure if I'm 100% happy with it, and I can be a perfectionist at times, which I think probably a lot of artists are. And what is it? I think there's like a saying, something like there's never a complete painting or something like that. There's something along those lines
yeah,
where it's like the artist will always look at that painting, will always look at, well, they're dead and gone, but we'll look at the Mona Lisa, that would look at whatever they had finished and be like, I could have done that or whatever. And so
there's always like
exactly
that.
what you're
Oh, I
saying
could
is
have.
by setting a due date for yourself where you have to have it done and ready, it gives you that little push, that little nudge to do your business or get off the pot, so to speak.
Yeah, absolutely.
So cool. Is that part of what? So that's kind of like the excited / started the channel. Is that? I mean, it seems like it's right along the what keeps you going type of thing. Is that kind of one of the things that just keeps you going about it too? Just
Well, I think I'm starting to see now, and it's funny because I've been at this for a few years now, like consistently, but I'm now starting to see the fruits of my labor, where like with every project that I'm doing, I'm like, okay, wait, hold on a second. I think I might be starting to get good at this.
yeah,
Like, and that's started to sort of reinvigorate me as well, because I always did stuff and I did like them, the things that I made, but now I'm starting to make some stuff and I'm like, hold on a second, like there's something to this. Like I think I'm starting to get good,
yeah,
and now that's reinvigorated me. So I think really just personal growth, like personal, like not being two things, not being as afraid to mess something up, because it will happen, but then also seeing that push and that courage to like work on something is now starting to pay dividends.
yeah.
It's now like the time that I put in is now showing, and I'm starting to, things are becoming easier for me to achieve the goal, you know? Even things that I've never done before. Like I did a wooden handle on that blaster that I showed, and I'd never done that.
The faux
But
wood,
I was
right?
like, well,
Is that
yeah,
faux?
yeah, yeah, painted,
Yeah.
yeah. And I was like, well, pretty sure I can tackle that. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? And even though I sort of struggled through it, I got there, and I was like, okay, like, all right.
Nice.
So that's also what keeps me going, getting better.
To do kind of a callback to something you said, a few moments ago, which is going back to us talking about trying not to be afraid of failure and all that stuff. That's another element of your channel, which is awesome, and like what you're just now talking about, which is all your viewers get to go along the journey with you. They get to see the progress. You're not just coming out, starting your channel and being like some sort of a multi-year veteran Hollywood props guy or whatever. Like what was that, Adam Savage, who I'm not saying anything negative about that guy at all, but I think that Adam Savage is someone who's out there, and he does like Nerf prop type stuff. He does all sorts of stuff on his channel. Excuse me. But he seems like he's like a veteran doing this stuff for quite a long time, and I haven't gone back to look at his history. Maybe he does have some early videos where he was kind of learning some of what he was doing, but I just think that's a neat element of what you show is your journey.
He was an ILM.
What's that?
He worked at Lucasfilm, so he's from an ILM background. So yeah, so he's a maker from like from the olden days, from the 1900s.
Well, then I'm not even entirely sure that he's not digital then. He could just be someone in a blue suit, like, and then they just,
or an animatronic, just a robot that moves his mouth.
Blue screens and rotoscoping.
Yeah. No, he's an old sort of ILM veteran, so he's been around in the prop community for the last like 30, 40 years. But still, though, he's someone that's very approachable and approaches every project that he does with that air of like wonder, with that air of like, well, let's see where this goes. Even though he's amassed all those skills, he still approaches everything that he does with like, what? Let's see where this goes. Good, let's see. Yeah, which I think is great.
What are some goals with your YouTube? Yeah, what are some goals with your YouTube channel? If you haven't, and we can obviously we can skip some of these questions if they're one, if they're dumb, two.
No, I think they were all great. Yeah. I think at the moment, I mean, without getting too far ahead of myself, because everyone would like to perhaps have this little hobby give back to them, in one way or another. But I think at the moment, my shortest goal is to be able to put up a video without having to promote it. That's something that is the most boring part for me.
Yeah.
Even even editing, even all of that, like I'm having fun throughout it. Like I like the creation of the thing. I love the creation of the video. All of that kind of really, is fun for me. I like the process of making. So all of that works. But having to then go out, and again, I always say this phrase, but having to go out and fight for my food is not fun, and sometimes that's those days where I release a video is I'm both very proud of what I've put out, but then also like beaten down by like where are the people, like because if I don't go out and chase some views and post in different places, different groups, social media, and all this stuff, like that initial rush won't come in. The funny thing is that a lot of my videos do really well down the line. I've got videos that have 40,000, 20,000 views, 40,000 views. Like I've got, nothing that's hit like crazy numbers, but those are pretty crazy for my channel.
Yeah.
And I think I do really well in search and I do really well with what I like to call like evergreen content, where someone's always
Oh,
going to want to learn how to bookbind.
yeah.
Someone's always going to want to maybe make their own lightsaber.
Mm,
Someone's always going to want to learn how to repaint a Nerf gun, you know?
yeah.
So it does well in, I shouldn't say repeat traffic, but it does well with like repeat, like where the search hits it, you
Longevity,
know?
or, yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You know, it's videos from 2 and 3 years ago that are still generating views on at a like a huge scale. They're still, on my top 10 always and whatnot. So I think that's my goal, is to be able to put out a video. And I don't know how I get there. I think it's, I really don't know. Is it a subscriber number? I really don't know. Um, but to be able to put out a video without having to then go out and promote it everywhere.
Which, on that
That's the
note,
boring.
do you have, so are you pretty much just YouTube, or do you have other social media accounts where people can find you under the Maker Maddox?
I have Instagram.
Yeah.
I have an Instagram. I don't do Twitter. Um, I can't. It is a dumpster fire. But I also do. I also play, I should say, on TikTok. I don't really use it as part of. Videos are very random, and sometimes my shorts will pop up on there, on my actual shorts, but my short videos.
That might get you some views.
I'm using that as like
Maker
I'm
Maddox
using that
shorts.
as like where do I get out this funny idea that isn't centered around making? Where do I put that out? I put that out on TikTok. So I think for the really the three that I use are YouTube, Instagram, and TikTok, and probably in that order.
So look at those places for him. You can find him on the social media outlets. um,
But I do a lot of promoting on Reddit and Facebook. I should say that. And it's probably like a tip that I'd like to share with you. Like, I'm sure there's wand groups all over the place, Harry Potter groups, Harry Potter cosplay groups, on Facebook. That's where most of my traffic comes from, and hopefully it's pulling in some new viewers. But that's where most of my day one, day two views are coming from.
Got it.
And then after that, it kind of takes off on its own.
Yeah, I do. I got Instagram. I have a Twitter account too, but I'm not really on there much. Facebook, Pinterest account, where I'll pin some of my designs and stuff like that once they go up on the Etsy shop. But
Yeah.
and I had my own. Well, I mean, I do have, but with COVID and all that stuff, all the small time businesses, primarily food trucks, were kind of like the bread and butter for a while, kind of just all, But I had my own business doing like social media marketing, graphic design, web design,
Oh, wow.
and stuff like that. So
Yeah.
I play on Facebook and stuff. I think I gotta put a little bit more effort into that though. I've been putting some effort into YouTube. The YouTube channel is a newer experience to me. I never really focused on that with any kind of clients or anything like that in the past, or myself.
Yeah.
So this is relatively new territory for me. But yeah, all good stuff. If you, and I don't need to know the names of them, but like if you were to say that you had someone or some things that are some of your big influences, which maybe we kind of already covered that back in the first question when you were talking about the films and stuff like that. But if you were to say that you had someone or something, being film or just whatever, that kind of influences you, what might that be?
Definitely Star Wars. I'm always thinking of, even when I shop for clothes, I'm always thinking like, if I were to add a bit more of embellishing, could this then become like a cosplay? And without the embellishment, could I then feel like I'm in universe in my day-to-day life? So definitely Star Wars, huge influence on me. Clothes, things, objects, ships, like that's, I love the stuff of Star Wars. um, rather than the people. And I'll go back and shout him out again. The godfather of the maker community, Jimmy DiResta, who I lived like 6 blocks away from for 2 years without knowing about him or anything. Like, I could have walked to his studio.
And now you do.
Every day.
Daily. No, I'm sure.
And no, I don't.
I'm just joking.
No, I don't. Yeah, and he's here. And he's here. He comes in through my door. You set it up. Like,
right? Oh my God!
Oh,
how did you do this?
My God. You're
amazing.
How did you know?
Yeah, right.
The rest is great. I think he's he's another generalist. He's amazing, and I think it's that approach to like, hey, you might mess this up. It's fine. It's okay. But again, he has been adopted as like the godfather of the maker community. He is a magnet. Mm-hmm. He is someone that brings people together. Even though he's not the biggest channel out there. There are channels that completely eclipse him. Mm-hmm. But there's something about his draw and his way about things, and his sort of like sort of nonchalantness, but still being serious at the same time.
Right.
That is great. Yeah.
That's something.
And it was his videos that made me come back to YouTube, and I was like, okay, there's something here.
Oh, as in like as a viewer, come back to YouTube.
Yeah.
Or yeah.
Yeah.
I'll need to check him out. I haven't heard of him before. I don't know if that's shame on me or not, but.
No, I mean.
But now I do.
No, it's all right. It's over. The interview's over, but like, that's fine. And you're like, and then it just becomes like spotlit, and then it's at the end of the.
You just swipe like your little like GoPro arm out of the way there, and the camera's all like just rage out. Jimmy, if you're watching this, I love you. Like,
but I think that's probably who would you say are some of your influences? Like, because you're primarily a Juan channel, right? So like,
which I've considered opening a separate Etsy shop and or a YouTube channel, but that would probably be something to be quite a bit down the line, kind of like Scrappers workshop type thing, or something a little bit more Star Wars themed, or something along those lines.
Sure.
But not specifically. The Scrapper aspect would be a little bit, but like kind of more all encompassing, because the YouTube channel Vander's Wands is, I'm not gonna be like doing tons of videos on like lightsabers and stuff like that, right?
Right.
Could, but it would seem a little odd placed. So it would be nice to have kind of a catch-all page or channel as well for some of those things that I'm also interested in. But so years ago, I don't have easy access to all of them, but I do have. I'll grab 2 real quick. Or will I? Yes, I will. So some years ago, and I showed these on my little intro video, or my first video that I ever put up. Years ago, I had to cut down some tree branches off of some trees in front of our house, to meet city, requirements of how low the branches can be or whatever. So I had all these like branches, and so I made my wife a wand because she was like a big Harry Potter fan. She was the one who brought me into it, and then naturally I just dominated, and now I'm like the bigger, because I was bred for this stuff.
You beat her at trivia and stuff.
I grew up watching Star Wars and like Willow and Princess Bride, just all sorts of fantasy.
The greats. Yeah.
Oh yeah. But hers is in a little like pallet case that I had. We had like an old pallet that I think our new refrigerator came in on, and I busted that down and made like a solid wood case for hers to go in, and it's got stuff on it, so I'm not gonna mess with it right now. But then I made my daughter's, which is this right here. It's kind of Hermione-ish inspired, but it's not. But like they can't be long. But I knew nothing of like the dimensions of the wands from the Harry Potter films.
Sure.
I knew nothing of certain design aspects. There's also this one that I started to make for myself, which kind of reminds me a little bit of like a vertebrae. And then I did this kind of random crap back here, which I hate, or that I don't like. But that comes from like what I was talking about before with making mistakes, but also designing without really, like, this was me winging it basically.
Right.
And I didn't really, I mean, with the little nubs that kind of were on the branch already, I had, I was like, oh, I could add these little recessed ring areas here and make it look kind of like a spinal cord type of deal. But beyond that, I didn't really have like a big, I didn't sketch it out, I didn't plan it or anything, right? So it was that designing from kind of random design, not so much a design of like choice exactly.
Right.
But all that being said is that I don't remember why. I don't remember what I was looking up or why. I saved a whole bunch of these tree branches. They're in like a big bin in my garage, and so I don't know why I was thinking about making some more. But I was just looking around online and YouTube, right?
Yeah.
And I came across this channel. I think the channel is Kaivox and Mikichi. I know Kaivox is the main.
Kaivox,
well, not the main, because they share it. It's a married couple, and he goes by Kaivox Ender. I would love to know how he came up with the Kaivox. Maybe, do you know? Because Ender, my guess is from the book Ender's Game.
I do know Kaivox.
Yeah.
Yeah, I do know Kaivox. I do know. We have done videos in the past together.
That's
like
cool.
I've got his contact, and I think I need to put you in contact with him.
So you were asking as far as inspirations, but like I found his channel, and I just he the way that he broke a lot of this stuff down, he kind of said like the ratios of the wands, like the handle length to the blade length, and I loved the fact that he which I'd seen some of his earlier videos, and he was calling like the handle and the shaft. He hadn't quite yet come up with his naming conventions for them fully, and then one day he did like a wand design thing, which I'm currently in the process of doing my own, and I will adapt some of his naming conventions, and I'm sure I'll put a link to his channel as well, because I only think that it's fair. I'm going to put it on mine, going to kind of redo some of what he does on his, maybe with a little bit of my own kind of tips or naming conventions and stuff like that in there as well.
Sure.
But I'm going to do it so that I have a complete, totally cohesive like course, lessons that I'm putting together. And I don't know that he would, but if ever he deletes his YouTube channel or something like that, I think that it would be a shame, because then people wouldn't have new people wouldn't be able to find that, those naming conventions.
That resource,
Right. He breaks the wands down into like
blade, guard, pommel.
Yeah. Right.
Which
and
is
I think it's so
how
beautiful.
you describe a lightsaber.
Exactly.
How you describe a sword or a knife,
So I found his page, and I had, I think in an email, I don't know, a correspondence with you in some fashion. I know that I referenced him, and I said that I kind of went to the Kaivox Academy, so to speak, because I watched a lot of his videos, and it all made sense, and I really liked his style, like I've seen other professional wand makers out there that do primarily lathe work, and they can be pretty, and they can do, like different wood combinations, handle to blade, they mix match woods, and they do different things, but and some of them have not completely lathe. Some of them have like partial lathe, and then they have like a bent handle at the end, but they don't really add any like tiny detail carvings into it, or like leather wraps, or work metal embellishments somehow into it. And so just a lot of the stuff that he was doing, like wood burring and all this stuff, really just resonated with me, I guess, obviously. And so I was like, that's how I want to make wands moving forward. Like me personally, I ain't mad at someone who's making wands on lathes, and popping them off and selling them for like $20, $30, whatever. Or just keeping them for themselves for fun, or anything like that. But yeah, that's just not what I want to do. So yeah, he was a big inspiration. There's another wand maker on Instagram that I have come across, and I don't know his name, but the name of his page is Crooked Wands. And he does a lot of like hand whittled wands. I think that what he had told me is that he pretty much does exclusively whittling. Maybe he uses a little bit of Dremel, but I think he does a lot of his from like branches and stuff like that he finds, which I like to do
Yeah.
too, here and there, because
That's how I would go about it.
yeah, I like some of the
You know,
natural
like,
imperfections or shapes and things like that come with it to kind of help inform some of the design, because it can add it can give you ideas sometimes. Um,
yeah.
but I also have a sketchbook where I draw out like designs and stuff like that.
It's a found object in and of itself. You know what I mean? Like
Right.
and then you work from that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, you just knock some bark off and you're good. Put a little point on the tip. Here's
Yeah.
my wand. No, no. It's for those who actually carve into it, But I have seen those, and again,
Yeah,
to
for
each
sure.
their own. Art is completely subjective. I can't tell you that isn't cool, that isn't good. You can't like that. No, to hell with that.
Right.
Love it, dude. If you
Yeah.
go out into your backyard and you break a branch off and you knock some of the additional little like twigs off the side of it and you carve off the bark and it's all the blade's all super fat and like it doesn't meet the Harry Potter dimensions and stuff, and you like that and like you genuinely that's the look that you want, cool, dude, like good
Yeah.
on you, man. Like that's you got yourself a wand. But
Yeah. There you
I
go.
just it's not what I'm looking to do with the stuff
Yeah.
that I put out. All right, everyone. That concludes part one of this two-part sit-down with DIYer Billi Maddox from the Maker Maddox channel. If you haven't checked out his channel yet, I don't know what you're doing. Head over there and check out his channel. He's got some fantastic DIY videos, helpful tips on his channel, so do check him out. There is part two that will be coming soon, and we just kind of discuss more about different little tips and tricks and thoughts on design processes and things of that nature. Also, there's going to be a very special announcement at the end of that part two video, so do make sure that you hang out to the very end of the video and check that out. If you've enjoyed this video, if it gave you a smile, if it helped you to think about some design elements, or if you learned any kind of like helpful little tips or tricks from this, make sure to hit that thumbs up, subscribe, click the little bell button to stay up to date on new releases, new videos. I do hope to be sitting down with more fellow creators and DIYers in the future and kind of picking their brain and asking them how they got into what they were doing. So I'm really looking forward to that. Stay tuned for part two of the sit down Q&A with Billi Maddox.